bass head, I'm a bass head, bass head, I'm a 18 inches in the trunk, knocking pictures off the wall, squatting on the 20 inches, I be creeping when I crawl, my car is a part of me, it's my personality, put my heart and soul in it, spent half of my salary. Check one, check two. What's going on, bass heads? What's going on, bass heads? Today's going to be a beginner's guide on how to hook up a car audio amplifier. I'm going to show y'all how to hook one up, how to tune one. I'm going to tell y'all everything you need, and I'm going to show y'all the difference between different types of wiring and show you where you can get the best stuff at. So stay tuned. Alright guys, so to start off with, most beginners aren't really going to be using an amp over 1500, maybe 200 watts. So I've got my Scar Audio 1500 here. I've got a couple different types of wiring to show y'all. I'll explain that. To start off with, after you got your amplifier, you want to order your wiring kit. Now if you know enough about it that you can build the wiring kit yourself, I recommend doing that because it's going to be cheaper. But if you are a beginner, you want to go ahead and just order a wiring kit. Now when you get your wiring kit, I use Sky High Car Audio. I recommend that, but if you want to find a different company, that's up to you. That's just what I use. But they have good products, really fast shipping, great service, and you can find just about anything on there. So when it comes to wiring and everything else you're going to need, I would check out Sky High Car Audio. Alright, so you're going to need a power wire and a ground wire, a small remote wire. You're going to need a set of RCA cables like these. You're going to need a fuse block and a fuse like this one. This is an A&L type fuse. And you're going to need a set of wire lugs like this. You're also going to need a way to hook it up to your battery. If you have something like this, when you put your lug on the end of your wire, you can attach it to here. Or you can find some car audio terminals like I use on my car. I've got Ill Customs terminals where you can either hook the wire straight into the terminal, or you can use a lug, and it's got a thing like this. But here's a picture of that. So that's what you're going to need to hook up your amp. Now, when you get your wiring kit, you want to make sure, if you buy individual wire, make sure you have enough wire to make it from the battery to where you want to install the amp at. Once you know where you want to mount your amp, you have a positive, a ground, and a remote wire. You're going to hook your positive. You're going to hook your positive to the positive, and you're going to run this one to a ground. You want to find a nice metal ground. You'll have to run it to somewhere on the frame or under the seat, but it has to be metal contact, and you want it to be clean metal. You want to either sand it or grind the paint off, and then find somewhere to mount it. Remote wire, your kit will come with a remote wire. You just need a small wire. It's probably like a 12 gauge or smaller than that, maybe 14 or 16 gauge. Make sure you don't touch any of these wires. You always want to have your fuse out. I'm going to go ahead and show you all the different types of wiring. When you're ordering your wiring, you have two different types of wiring. You have OFC, which is oxygen free copper, and you have CCA, which is copper clad aluminum or copper coated aluminum. I will show you all the difference. This right here is OFC wire. It is solid copper. This is the best you can get. If you look in the end, it's solid copper. It's all one color. This wire right here is CCA. It's a lot cheaper, but it don't carry near as much current. You can get away using a smaller OFC wire than a bigger CCA wire. If you look at the CCA wire, it looks copper on the outside, but when you look on the inside, it's aluminum. So it's just coated aluminum, which will not transfer as much power as OFC. So even if you have to get a smaller wire of OFC, I would always go with the OFC. If your amp uses a 4-gauge inlet, you get 4-gauge OFC. That OFC is going to move as much power as a 0-gauge CCA wire. Another thing about it, it's a lot softer. It's easier to move around your car. This is real stiff, and honestly it just kind of sucks. So stay away from the CCA if you can. Now when you got your wiring and you got your amp where you want to mount it at, start your wire at the battery, mount your lug to your battery terminal, run your wire the way you want to run it, and it's going to go right on the positive. When you run your ground, you're going to want to find a good ground. It needs to be metal, and it needs to be either sanded through the paint or grinded off. It needs to be bare metal. That's going to be your best contact. So you'll run it from the ground on the amp to a good solid contact that needs to be somewhere on the frame or on the body if the body's connected to the frame, but it needs to be bare metal. And after you mount it, you should throw a little bit of spray paint over it just so it don't corrode or rust. And then you have your remote wire. The remote comes from the back of your head unit. It's going to be a blue wire, and it'll run from the back of the head unit to right here. It just needs to be a small wire. Your kit will come with a remote wire, but I think it's like a 14 gauge, maybe a 12 gauge. You really don't need that big of a wire.
That big of a wire?
That's right. Alright, speaker wires, pretty self-explanatory. This one's got 2 negatives, 2 positives. Yours probably won't have that. So on the SCAR, we're just going to pretend you have 1 negative, 1 positive. Once you have your subwoofers wired and you have 1 negative and 1 positive coming from your speakers, positive will go to the positive, negative will come to the negative. Alright, so once you have your positive, your ground, your remote, and your speakers hooked up, you're going to come around to the back. You're going to have a set of RCAs. You're going to run it from your sub out on your head unit through your car to wherever your amp's mounted at. So once you have it ran from the head unit to your amp, plug them in right here. And once you have power and everything's good, you're going to turn your gain all the way down, your low pass all the way down, and your subsonic I would do about halfway. Now, this isn't the true way how to set an amp, but this is how to do it with no tools, by ear, for a beginner if he really wants to hook it up himself. You want your bass boost off. Every head unit has a point to where they start distorting. If it goes up to 60, it probably starts distorting around 50. If it goes up to 40, it probably starts distorting around 35. You just don't want to be able to turn it all the way up. You want to leave a little bit. So if you've been playing your head unit long enough to know where you like to turn it up to, the max that you want to turn it up to, what you want to do is put on a song that's got good bass. Turn your head unit all the way up to where you're comfortable. And you're going to take your gain and you're going to turn it up to where you feel comfortable on your speakers. So if this is a 1500 watt amp, it's probably going to put out around 1300 watts. So if you have, say I have an EVL 15 and it's 1200 watts, and I know this puts out around 1200 watts, if you don't want to max it out, you know you don't want this all the way up. If you turn it all the way up, it's going to max that sub out. and you never really want to turn your amp all the way up. So what I would do is on your head unit, have your sub out, that's your bass, set to 0, bass boost off. Then turn your gain up to where you feel comfortable and to around what kind of power you want to put to it. If it's a 1500 watt amp, you know, halfway is around 750. Any big car audio guy is going to tell you don't do it that way. But if you don't have hundreds of dollars for a SMD, or you don't know anybody to do it for you, just do it by ear, but make sure you don't blow your speaker. Once you've got this where you want it, say if I had an EVL15, I would turn this to about 3/4 of the way up. That way I know it's not all the way up causing distortion, and I know it's putting out a good 1000 watts. After that, you want to adjust your low pass filter. What your low pass does is allows bass to come through. So a high pass allows everything above that. A low pass allows everything under that. So say this is set at 50 hertz. That means you're going to get no bass until you get down to around 50 hertz. And everything below that is going to play. So 50 hertz and down is what you're going to hear. Most systems, especially if you have, say if you have 8s, 10s, or 12s, some of them will go up to 100 hertz. But 80 is usually the sweet spot. If you have your box tuned really low and you only play, say, under 45 hertz, then you can set this to around 50 hertz, 50 or 55 hertz. But I recommend putting it at 80 hertz. That's what I always do. And I always keep it about right there. Your subsonic filter, that's just the opposite. That will not let anything lower than what you set it to. So if it was all the way up to 50 hertz, it's not going to let anything under 50 hertz. What this does is keeps you from maxing your subs out or damaging them from playing too low. So if your box isn't tuned really low and you don't want to be playing under 30 hertz or 25 hertz, then you want to set it around 30 hertz. So I usually keep mine around 20 because I've got two 18s. I like screwed and chopped music. I let it get pretty low. So I usually keep this around 20 hertz. That way I just know if it starts getting to 20 hertz, it's not really going to play below that. It's going to start cutting the power out, so it's not getting full power at 20 hertz. But if you are a beginner, I recommend setting that to around 30 hertz. Just to be safe. So once you got all that set, go ahead and try it, see how it sounds. If you want a little bit more power, your gain's going to give you a little more power. If you want to allow a little bit higher bass to come through, you want to turn your low pass up a little bit, especially if you like rock or country. I'd probably have that around 100. Or if it's playing too high and you think you're hearing words come through, turn it down a little bit. I recommend 80 though. Subsonic filter, if you're a beginner, keep it around 30. That'll keep you pretty safe. Sometimes these aren't the most accurate and you kind of have to do it by ear, because technically that would be 25, but I don't like the way that sounds. When I turn it down to about right here, it seems more like it's around 25 to me. So alright, you got everything set, your bass boost's off, you got your RCAs in, all your wiring's hooked up. Jam it out, see what it does, and tweak it, play with it. Just don't blow your shit. Alright guys, if y'all want to see more videos on how to do stuff, maybe how to wire subs or anything else, comment on it. Let me know what y'all would like to see. This is just a little beginner video, so all the big guys don't roast my ass on this. Just trying to help out some dudes that ain't really got some money and want to hook up their own shit. Alright y'all, I'm out. Peace.